Hi everyone, welcome to the Contributor Show, where you can learn how to start and grow your business and how to make money. Today we are going to talk about the unique technology of using a virus to cure genetic diseases. Because of this revolutionary technology, the company Inventor was acquired for $4 billion. But before we begin, please subscribe and hit the bell below to be notified about my new videos. Otherwise, YouTube won't let you know. I won't be able to pay you because I'll probably never be able to raise money, and people think this is sort of ludicrous, but if we're successful, we will change the world. With those words, a scientist named Jude Samulski planted the seed for what has become one of the world's most successful gene therapy companies. Almost 40 years ago, Dr. Jude Samulski asked if a virus could be used to erase genetic disease. Discovering the answer cleared the path for historic advances in genetic medicine. My today's guest has over 20 years of biopharmaceutical leadership experience. She was a part of the management team at Therapeutics, which was acquired by Baxter in 2014 for $70 million. Most recently, she served as a chief executive officer and co-founder at Bamboo Therapeutics, which was acquired in August 2016 by Pfizer in a deal valued at $827 million. In 2021, Sheila was named EY's 2021 Entrepreneur of the Year National Overall Award winner. This award recognizes the unstoppable entrepreneurs transforming our world. Please welcome my guest, a CEO and co-founder of a leading clinical stage AAV gene therapy company, asked by Sheila Mikhail. Hi Sheila, welcome to the Contributor Show.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you for having me.
To start off our conversation, I would like to ask if you can explain our viewers in a plain English what is AAV gene therapy and what makes this technology revolutionary.
Sure. If you have a genetic disease, that means that you have a gene that is not functioning properly. What we do is we use a non-pathogenic virus called an adeno-associated virus, or AAV for short. And we use that virus to transport a good gene into the body where it does the work that the defective one could not do. And how we do that is we take out all the wild type DNA from the AAV virus, and that just leaves a shell, a protein shell. And in that protein shell, then we could put a therapeutic gene. And we all know from COVID that viruses are very good at being able to evade the body and get into, the cells and basically replicate, produce protein. So instead of creating disease, what we do is we use the virus as a transportation system to get into the nucleus of the cell, where it uses the cell's machinery to pump out a therapeutic protein. So it's a relatively simple concept, but it's taken years to actually make it work effectively.
Oh, I see. So use the virus as a transport, the ability of the virus go to DNA, and then you put on the virus something which will actually fix the disease, right?
Yeah, and the simplest way of thinking about it is it's like a biological FedEx truck. We can actually program these viruses to target particular tissues. So it's almost like we can put a zip code on our FedEx package, and then our biological FedEx truck takes it to the proper tissue. So if we want to deliver to muscle, for example, for muscular dystrophy, we can do so. Or if we want to target the heart for heart diseases, we can deliver the therapeutic gene to the heart. So we have a lot of control over where our packages go, so we can target the right tissue for the disease state.
If I'm not mistaken, AskBio is the third biotech company you successfully lead as a CEO. In October 2020, AskBio was acquired by Bayer for mind-blowing $4 billion. What inspired you to choose this career in the first place?
So it was sort of a serendipitous situation. I'm a lawyer by training. I also have a background, an MBA in finance, and I was teaching a course at the University of North Carolina that basically instructed professors in how to spin out companies and advance their technologies through the lab and hopefully eventually, be marketable so it could help patients. And it just so happens that Jude Samolsky was in the audience, and Jude, of course, was the first to clone AAV for therapeutic purposes. So he's widely known as the father of the AAV gene therapy field. And he approached me and he asked me if I could help him start a company. And the purpose for why he wanted to start a company was at the university, he could only take his inventions so far. He could only, do the lab work. He couldn't translate it into human clinical trials. In order to do that, he needed to form some kind of corporate structure. And he told me at the time that gene therapy was not really in favor and it was difficult to raise money. But he said, if we were successful, we could change the world. So I've been working now with Jude for 20 years. And it was really that vision of being able to treat the underlying cause of disease rather than just, dealing with the symptoms and giving patients hope, patients with devastating disease, many of whom were children, hope for a potential, life-sustaining option. And so that's why I was involved. And it was a very difficult time for many years. But as you said, we sold to Bayer last year. Bayer has continued to operate us as an independent company. And so we still have a lot of decision-making rights over our therapeutics and our technology. So even though we sold the company, I continue to remain as the CEO.
I think this is one of the best way to sell the company when you're still in control of the vision, and this is great. Congratulations on that. Yep. Wow, that's amazing. So what diseases can be already cured today by AAV gene therapy developed by AskBio?
So today, our technology is used in several different therapeutics that have been approved. The first drug that was approved was developed by Kathy Hai, and Dr. Hai is now part of AskBio. That uses AskBio's technology, and that therapeutic was to treat inherited blindness. So we literally now can make the blind see using AAV and some of AskBio's technology. Our technology was also used for Zolgensma, a drug to treat spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA, which was a very devastating disease that affected children. Basically, we've successfully kept many children suffering from SMA alive because of the use of our therapeutic. There are also other diseases that are being treated that have not yet quite been approved using AAV technology and some of the AskBio intellectual property, including a treatment that was developed by AskBio for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And that drug is now being advanced through pivotal clinical trials. Duchenne's muscular dystrophy is a very devastating disease. It affects young boys' ability to walk. They usually lose that ability by their early teens, and they usually succumb to the disease by their early 20s. There's no viable treatment today that is life-sustaining for Duchenne, so we're excited that is advancing in pivotal clinical trials. AskBio also has several drugs for other devastating diseases in clinical trials. We are working on a treatment for Parkinson's disease and have had some early promising results. We're also working on late-stage heart failure, limb-girdle 2I, Pompe disease, and will soon be in the clinic for Huntington's. So we have a wide variety of different devastating diseases on which we're working.
I see. So what diseases can be potentially cured with AAV gene therapy by today, and they don't have yet cure yet? So what kind of a disease can be?
That's exactly true. Gene therapy has the potential with just one treatment to potentially cure the disease. And that is something that's different because gene therapy, unlike other traditional forms of medicine, doesn't treat the symptomology of the disease, but instead goes to the underlying molecular cause of the disease and fixes it there. And so it really is, fixing disease, not just treating the symptoms, which eventually, as we all know, if you just treat the symptomology, the disease state progresses, and that's usually not a good outcome for most patients.
Wow, this is amazing information. So your technology actually fixed the problem, not the symptoms.
Correct.
Wow, this is big. So I'd like to ask in this case, so what is the AskBio company's mission? Why are you doing, guys, what you're doing?
We were formed many years ago as a coalition between scientists, primarily Jude Smolsky, and parents who had suffered from devastating disease. And a lot of those parents were looking for treatment options. We had one parent who had a child with giant axon neuropathy, which was a devastating neurological disease. We had parents with children with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And again, these parents came together with Jude to try to find alternatives for treatments because traditional approaches hadn't been very helpful. And so our root, I guess, beginnings were really parents motivated to find some solutions to keep their children alive. And we brought the science aspect, the adeno-associated virus and gene therapy technologies to try to address those needs.
So what critical component of your position makes the work challenging?
I think it's always the people management. People are very complex and they have lots of ambitions and goals, and trying to figure out, how to get people to work together in harmony sometimes can be difficult. We have now over 300 employees operating in 5 different countries. We have been growing at astronomical rates. We more than doubled our numbers last year alone. And we expect that rate of growth will continue. So as you integrate new people, especially given COVID and the geographical differences, right, and cultural differences, trying to figure out how to unite people, behind common goals and get them all to work together in harmony sometimes can be difficult. I would say that's the most complicated thing. So underneath the AskBio umbrella is 2 different businesses. One is a CDMO business, contract manufacturing business, and then the other is the therapeutic development business, and they're quite different. On the CDMO business, we use our state-of-the-art cell line, we call it the Pro-10 cell line, in order to manufacture not our own needs, but also the needs of our competitors and our collaborators. So we sell our excess capacity and manufacture the products essentially of many different companies in the AAV space. And the management of the 2 businesses is quite different. On the CDMO business, it's really about filling up capacity and maximizing EBITDA, whereas on the other side of the business, on therapeutic development, of course, it's about advancing programs through preclinical studies and then into human clinical trials. The risk profiles, the investment needs, et cetera, are quite different. There's also a challenge of getting 2 different businesses underneath the same umbrella to work together. And so far that's worked out well because the CDMO business generates cash that then helps the therapeutics business. So it's been an interesting business model.
Yeah, this is good to have such a cash cow so you can finance your R&D independently. I never seen a successful person who never made mistakes. What is your greatest failure story and what did you learn? How did you recover from it?
I think one of the hardest issues I dealt with is I negotiated a deal for 18 months. It was a make it, break it type deal for the company. We were negotiating with a strategic partner that was going to put in significant amounts of cash, several hundred million, into the company and co-develop a program with us. After 9 months, we had documents pretty much ready to go. They were at each side's attorneys, and we were expecting, to close the next day. On the eve of the closing, the strategic partner pulled back the deal. And that was extremely devastating because the mistake I made was putting all of my eggs in one basket and getting this deal done and working very ambitiously to get it done. When they pulled back, I had very little cash left in the bank, and I basically had to do a fundraising overnight, which luckily we were able to do. We raised 235 million. And
overnight?
Pretty much overnight, pretty much in 6 weeks.
How did you do that?
I got very lucky. And I think that was probably the biggest mistake I made, putting so much effort into one deal and not contemplating that that deal could go wrong. It was so close to being completed that I just, assumed it would happen and hadn't spent a lot of time diversifying, my attention and other options. If I hadn't been able to fundraise, if the market hadn't been, as optimal as it was, it could have been a very difficult situation. So I think the lesson I've learned is, no matter how close a deal is, always contemplate that something could go wrong. That was probably the biggest mistake I made, but luckily there weren't any any repercussions. The fact that we had this deal sort of in the works actually was leverageable into getting the financing done quickly because people knew that there was a lot of value because the strategic partner, right, was so close to getting the deal and that they could walk back into the deal at any point in time. It actually put a lot of pressure on the financiers to do the deal quickly on good terms. So it worked out advantageously, but it could have gone very badly.
You use the deal that even didn't pan out. You still use the deal, the opportunity, explaining why this deal kind of can be to convince the investors to, right?
Exactly. And in fact, the
Awesome.
strategic partner during the discussions with the investors came back and wanted to reinitiate the deal. And so it actually worked out very fortuitously, right? It gave us the pressure point that we needed in order to complete a financing quickly and on favorable terms. But again, I got lucky. It could have gone very wrong. And I think the lesson learned is to make sure that you have multiple things always going on at once. Don't depend upon a deal, no matter how close it is to getting done. Don't assume that deal is going to get done because even at the 11th hour, it can blow up.
This is a valuable lesson, that's for sure. All executives deal with a lot of problems daily. What is your typical way of dealing with difficult situation like you just described? Give us an example besides this example you just gave us. So what usually you do in this difficult situation?
Yeah, well, I think, you always have to do scenario planning, right? So you always have to contemplate what if something goes wrong, then what are you going to do? So it's a lot of gamemanship that you have to think about, strategic, planning. So I think that's always key. Always have contingent plans for the worst case scenario. I think also keep calm, be unemotional about things, and just sort of, I always tell people, work the problem, right? Things are not going to work out the way that you expect. Science is not going to work out the way you anticipate. You're always going to have issues in the clinic that, the animal studies hadn't predicted. You just have to dig and sort out the problem, right? Be more focused, put all the emotion in problem solving and moving forward rather than laying blame or spending a lot of emotions, about the situation. That's not productive. And so I think one of my key phrases that I say a lot of people is just work the problem. Keep focused and work the problem. Key thing. Have contingency plans. And then when you find yourself in an unexpected situation, just focus, right, on solving the problem. I always get people who want to lay blame or point fingers, and I don't engage in that at all because it doesn't help, right? And it just creates divisiveness. So it's all about channeling the energies and the collective focus on advancing forward.
Yeah, this is very wise. Yeah, don't blame anybody because it just take energy, create bad blood, and doesn't solve any problem, create new problem. If you ever had mentors, who were your mentors and what is the impact they have on you?
So I would say the biggest mentor I've had was Bill Hawkins. He used to be the CEO of Medtronic and he was a board member. I think he was just a very experienced CEO and he had been through all the things, right, that we've dealt with. And so he knew how to deal with investors. When deals blew up, he sort of knew how to look long term and how to refocus, right, in a situation of crisis. So he's been an incredible mentor because of his experiences and then basically, mentoring me on how to handle difficult situations and sort of be the sounding board, right? I'm thinking about doing this or I'm thinking about doing that. So mentors are very, invaluable. And I would say I had the fortune of having a very experienced, Fortune 100 mentor, Fortune 100 CEO mentor.
As I mentioned before, you've been CEO at the 3 companies, successful companies. So what are the top 3 mistakes a CEO should avoid based on your experience?
I think the key is always be positive, right? If you start becoming negative or you start doubting yourself, then it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You really have to, your team is looking for you to be confident to, during difficult times, they want to see that you are in control and that you believe that the company is going to move forward and, their positions are safe. So it's always, be positive and be confident don't let them see you sweat, I think is the key, no matter what kind of situation you're in. I would say that's the number one thing, right? Always be positive, always be confident. I would say the second thing is, I've been at AskBio for 20 years and we had to be very creative because in the early days we could not get funding, right? But yet almost 20 years later, we had a successful exit, as you indicated. And I had to think differently, right, about how to fund. I literally had to figure out how to build build, almost $1 billion company with no funding.
Right.
And, that wasn't so easy, and most people would have walked away saying it's impossible, but yet we achieved it. And so think out of the box. For us, that meant, building manufacturing in Spain because we got financial support from the Basque government and from local investors there. It meant doing things like bartering our IP with GSK in order to get access. Literally, we bartered, right? We did a horse trade. So, thinking creatively. I think the third thing is you just have to be really persistent and tough. And you just have to keep at it no matter what, right? If you're easily discouraged, this is not a place that you should be, because it's very like building companies, especially, in transformative fields where the science is evolving, is extremely difficult. And you're not going to be welcomed often, or you're not going to be loved. I used to go to investor conferences in the early days, and I was almost like I had the plague, right? People would not want to talk to me because gene therapy was so out of vogue. And so you just have to really develop tough skin. The fourth thing, if you don't have a bigger purpose, if you're motivated just by money, I would say, or success, then this is probably not the business for you. You have to have a bigger calling. And for me, it was really trying to find treatment options for devastating disease, especially diseases that affect children. So if you have that bigger purpose, it's easier every day to get up, right, and keep doing it no matter what kind of challenge. So I think, one of the failures for a lot of people is they don't have the right motivation. You have to have the right motivation. And then the fifth thing is, a lot of times people worry more about, I would say, the bigger, splash and achievement, but success is really a whole bunch of incremental steps. It's unfortunately, a lot of drudgery of just, doing it day in, day out, making those advancements, the IND enabling studies, all the CMC work, making incremental improvements on your production technology. It's just, keeping at the task and doing the paces and making incremental improvements that eventually get you sort of the breakthrough in your clinical programs or in the technology advancements. So you have to be willing to, be satisfied by the small steps in order to get to, the big achievements.
Yeah, this is very valuable. Especially I like the fourth one where you said you need to have a big vision. Like Toyota founder, his vision was to make Japan, not Toyota, Japan, country known for the quality, because that time when he started business, Japan was known for very poor quality of the products. And he had such a big vision, which for the country, not for himself. So this is what you just said, that you need to have a big vision, not just want to make money, not just to become famous, but something way bigger and for somebody, not just for you. So what would you like to do outside of work besides walking your dogs? Do you have any hobbies?
So I'm not trained as a scientist, but I actually really enjoy science. So I read a lot of scientific journals, and I like to really engage in, discussions with a lot of scientific inventors. So my passion really is about science, especially in the healthcare area. So I'm always looking at, how we can use our science today into other areas. So for example, lately I've been working on a technology that we were using in the AAV field to basically avoid negative 90 degrees Celsius cold chain storage requirements. And we found some technology at the University of Texas, and it works beautifully. And in fact, we're now working with the International Space Station to take our AAV therapeutics and store them in what we call a thin film technology and send it up to space. Because today, even though we have the technology where we can transport people from Earth to Mars, we actually can't do that because of human physiological limitations. Your bone mass deteriorates, your muscle deteriorates, and you lose teeth. And so you need to replenish those things. And so we've been looking at growth factors and other things that we can store in our thin film, and then basically enable regeneration, right, of tissue so people can endure the longer travel times. And so that's one idea. But this technology, of course, it was originally developed for the Ebola vaccine. We retrofitted it for gene therapy purposes. And now with COVID, we spun out a company that essentially is now looking at using the technology for its original purpose, going back into the vaccine area. So, that's sort of my thing. I like to think about different technologies, how it can enable AskBio's technology in additional fields or purposes, and again, I'm always trying to drive down the costs of our therapeutics. And so by using this technology, we can extend the shelf life. That drives down the cost, especially for ultra rare indications. But in so doing, right, we are now advancing it also for vaccines. So that's what I like to do. Some women go shopping for shoes. I like to shop for technology.
Which is, I think, smart because, yeah, this is like, wow, you send in your samples and your treatment to the space station. Wow, amazing.
Well, it makes it fun too, because sometimes I have to tell you, being at this for 20 years, you're always trying to figure out how to keep people engaged. And we've been fortunate. A lot of our key people in the company have been with us for, very long time. And you always have to figure out how to keep it relevant, how to keep them interested. And, you want to keep your scientists curious, and give them some fun, right? You want the job to be fun. And so that's what I'm always trying to do, is think about how do we redeploy our technology in new ways, makes them think a little bit differently and actually, gets them to have a little bit of fun. We had a day when we kicked off this project where people came in dressed up as astronauts, right? And had a little
Oh, really? That's cool.
On. So, it's making it fun to come to work.
That's great.
And it's hard with COVID, right? Everybody's been struggling with COVID. So trying to figure out how to keep people engaged, how to keep them motivated, and how to keep them having fun with all the things that are going on is important.
And you give them new challenges, because when you learn something outside the box, some new technologies, you bring to those scientists you work with and say, hey, what do you know about that? And they enjoy, right? Because they can advance their things, right?
Exactly. So it's interesting. And Bayer has been very supportive of a lot of these initiatives. In fact, while we're historically been an adeno-associated virus company, just focusing on AAV, Bayer has asked us to expand our mission more broadly to become a gene therapy company and incorporate non-viral approaches and, gene editing and, all sorts of different things into our toolbox. And so that keeps people engaged and learning, right? Fundamentally, when you have high caliber people involved in your company, of course, they're going to work towards, specific goals and objectives because they want to get treatments to patients as quickly as possible. But they also want to, expand their knowledge and they want to learn new things. And so you keep people engaged and you avoid this great resignation if you can, keep them learning. I think that's a key thing, keep them doing new things.
So what do you anticipate for the gene therapy market in the next 10 years?
I think we will have some trials and tribulations like any new technology that evolves, right? It's unfortunate that the animal models are not predictive of what's going to happen in humans. So I think we'll see some setbacks as we continue to push the boundaries of the technology. But then I think we'll overcome those and we'll continue to make advancements. There's so much money being put into the sector now, and there's so many efforts. I'm really excited because as a field, I think we'll treat more devastating diseases. And to date, we've been focused on rare diseases, primarily because those are monogenic diseases. You have one gene that's defective. And so, the drug, it's the good gene that you're going to put in, right? The body to overcome the defective gene. But I think we're going to go into some of the pathway diseases where there could be multiple different genes that are contributing to the disease state, such as heart failure and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And I think we'll see successes there. I know in AskBio's own work, it's early, but we're seeing some very positive results in the clinic. And I think others are reporting the same thing. And so, we're learning in the orphan diseases, the rare diseases, but then we're taking those learnings and we're advancing it to disease states where we can help broader swaths of the population. So I think it's a very exciting time because as we continue to make those advancements, diseases today that really, shorten people's lives or have a very negative impact on the quality of life, I think we'll be able to to address those and provide some more hope and options for patients. So it is a very exciting time.
That's amazing. If you start your career over again, what is the advice you would give to younger yourself?
Don't take it so personally. I think often when there's setback, you always take it as the CEO, or what could I have done better? You beat yourself up a lot. And I think as I've gotten older, I don't spend all that emotion, right, on those setbacks or that sort of self-defeated attitude. I'm more positive and look forward. I wish I would have figured that out earlier in my life, because there was a lot of emotion and sort of self-abuse that I imposed on myself when I couldn't advance the technology. And the society wasn't ready for it yet, unfortunately, right? It took some time to figure out that how, payers were going to pay for it. Were people ready for something like gene therapy? Were they willing to take the risk, right, of advancing the technology? Society just wasn't ready for it. And no matter how hard you worked to push it forward, it just wasn't its time. I wish I had more maturity to say sometimes it's not what you do. You don't have that much control. Sometimes there's bigger forces. And, I think I've learned as I've gotten older, technologies often advance, right, when society's ready. And there's not much you can do because the investors and the regulators and payers, right, and patients aren't ready yet. So yeah, that was probably be the one thing I wish I could have told myself earlier, right? Just be patient, and, you're fighting an uphill battle, and don't take it so personally.
This is a great advice, I think, for everyone. We all have the same issues, overreacting on something which not in control. We just need to be more patient and focus on things we can control and we can do, actually. Thank you, Sheila, for so many insights and advices. And it was a pleasure have you a guest at the Contributors. I hope our viewers enjoy this interview. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you for allowing me to be part of the Contributors.
If you like this interview, please like and share to help grow the channel. If you want to be notified about my upcoming guests, subscribe and hit the bell. And by the way, who else should I interview? Leave a comment below. Thanks for watching The Contributors. Stay tuned.